Hail, hail. Good evening, folks. Welcome along to Monday night's Endless Celts Podcast. Another Champions League rewind show tonight, with the fact it's very much not much happening at Celtic Park at the moment that we didn't cover last week. So we thought we were going to do this last week before the news of Peter Lawwell's return came. So let's get back onto the rewind shows whilst the World Cup continues. My name's Anthony. I'll be hosting tonight. Delighted to be joined by two of the regulars, Stephen and Franco. How you doing, boys?
All good, mate. I think we're pretty much still recovering from Friday, that marathon quiz show. It's been incredible. It was a great Friday. Looking forward to a nice rewind show today.
Absolutely, and I have to take. Obviously, I was meant to be doing all the hosting job on Friday night, but couldn't make it, and I can only take my hat off to Willie. It was such short notice to put a quiz like that together. It was absolutely fantastic. And all the screenshotting and all the picture rounds and all that. It was absolutely fantastic. And absolutely, I think I'm due him a couple of drinks on Saturday night. I think I have to say. But so well done again, guys. It was a great show and a great laugh. And just to do the quick intro before we get started. Beer 52, folks, is our sponsor. Go online, follow our link. Grab a free case of bevy before the big man comes on the 25th. The offer's still there. Don't know what the latest is in terms of the Super Six, but I'm assuming Franny's about 100 points ahead.
There's not been any weeks, but there's not been any games, so it's annoying.
See, that's the thing. I wasn't sure if it was. I know there's a lot of games happening over the World Cup. But yeah, you've got a commanding lead, Franny, shall we say. You could probably sit out for a couple of weeks and probably still none of us would get you. And like I said, folks, welcome along everyone. Get involved in the comments and the discussion today. Stephen's in charge of all of them, so he'll bring them up on the screen and we can add that into the discussion as we go along. But like I said, it starts a Champions League rewind tonight. This is something we agreed to do at the start of the season, just with the fact that we were back in the tournament this year. We thought we'd look back every so often at years gone by. So we'd completed the Martin O'Neill seasons. And tonight we're looking back at season 2006-2007. It was a season in which we finally broke the glass ceiling of not getting through a group stage. We qualified for the last 16 for the first time. We became the first champions side from Scotland to qualify for the last 16 of the Champions League and win the league in the same season. A feat we've achieved no fewer than 3 times since then. And but yeah, apparently, Rangers had done it the year before with 7 points, Stephen, but it was like the easiest Champions League group you could ever wish to have, and they finished third in a 2-horse race. So get it right up them. And but to take it back to 2006, even like I said, the first season under Gordon Strachan had came the year before. He'd faced a massive rebuilding job with the departure of Martin O'Neill, probably not too dissimilar to what Ange faced last summer, and we got a lot of players in straight away. We had a massive disappointment with not qualifying for Europe at all, but as in retrospect it could possibly be argued that gave this new team a lot of chance to bed in together and form a good team spirit. And we won the league in record time. We won it very, very quickly, and also had a League Cup triumph as well. So similar to Ange in his first season, 2 trophies out of 3. And thanks to Henrik Larsson's exploits in the Champions League final against Arsenal that year, it meant that due to the coefficient, the Scottish champions went right into the group stages. So with no qualifiers to worry about that season. And Neil Lennon, one of the O'Neill stalwarts, was still there, but that summer saw the departure of one of the last of them. By this point, Sutton had departed, John Hartson had departed, and Stilian Petrov had moved down south to Aston Villa for big money, £8 million, a record transfer sale for a good few years at Celtic. And with that money, Gordon was allowed to sort of add to the players that he'd already brought in the year before. You think some big money signings as well. You think of the likes of Jan Vennegoor, Hesselink, Gary Caldwell, the tenacious Thomas Gravesen, one way to describe him, from Real Madrid, no less. Kenny Miller, and was also brought in on a pre-contract as well. So complete reshaping of the team. And he basically felt this was a team that he felt could go places in Europe.
I mean, see, to be fair, you spoke about Larson there as well. It was a double-edged sword. Last time we spoke, he scored against us and broke our hearts, and he's doing us favours in the Champions League final. So he always comes back some way to always be the king of us and be the king of Celtic and do us a favour, get us into the group stage proper without the qualifying rounds. I mean, you talked about Strachan's first season, Armedia Bratislava. Oh my God, you're thinking that the warning signs are there. You remember that game? Was it McGeady played left back in parts of the home game, and it was just horrendous. Marshall had 2 horrendous games, and then Bhoys came into the club and stuff like that. But I liked Gordon Strachan. It still baffled me why he got a lot of stick from the Celtic support. I know there was connections with Aberdeen and stuff and all that type of thing, but I thought he was a good manager for us. 4 seasons, 3 league titles. Can't really complain about it. And I know he probably wanted to leave after the 3rd season, but again, emotional side of things took over, and he probably stayed on a year or 2 longer than he should have, and he's already said that. But regarding this team, I mean, you're losing the likes of Petrov, going to Aston Villa, and he made those song and dance about it. He wanted to leave and try something different. That was fair enough. But when you're bringing in the likes of Jan Vinegar Hesling from PSV, I think it was, for about £3.2 million, and you're bringing in Caldwell, who he loved Caldwell. And to be fair, like, he tried to play him in midfield at sometimes as well. It's crazy on it. His range of passing, he thought he was Beckenbauer sometimes, Gary Caldwell, but he was all right with McManus. And then you could have likes of Yuri Yarosik and Kenny Miller, and obviously Kenny Miller with the Rangers connection. People don't like him already, but for us, I thought he was all right. I thought he'd give us all. I think in the European stage, he was decent. He got 2 against Benfica. He ran some defences ragged. A bit like, in his own kind of way, a bit like Maeda in terms of work rate, pace, trying to get in about defences, and not the most technically gifted player, but he did give a good account of himself in a Celtic jersey, even scored against the club he loves. But I mean, you park that all on one side. Gordon Strachan, as you said, had a big, massive job to do, and like, you keep Neil Lennon a part of that. He's the contingent that holds the team together, and you add different people around it. Like Sarasi came his first season. You know what I mean? Like McGeady's still around. Nakamura was there. You go to McManus, Boric, who was probably coming into his best years as a goalkeeper with us, probably one of the best keepers in the world on his day. Obviously, off the field issues kind of hampered him. And what he could do, and he was more fond of the drink and going out clubbing than he was being professional. But unbelievable goalkeeper for us. And yeah, I mean, get into Europe, you're confident, you're happy. You see the group, obviously, you want to come on to that. But yeah, it was a team that was not reminiscent of the O'Neill era, because that's a totally different quality of player, but he was building and shaping his own team a bit like what Postecoglou's doing now.
Absolutely. And, Franco, we were drawn in Group F that season, and even although, like I said, no qualifiers, we were actually drawn in. That was one of the first time we'd ever been the pot 2 side in the draw, and we were drawn. It was a fresh group, teams we'd never had before in any of previous adventures under Martin O'Neill. English giants Manchester United were the pot 1 side, and our friends from Portugal, Benfica, a team that we had a lot of history with, were the pot 3 opponents, and in pot 4 to complete the group was FC Copenhagen. Perhaps a little bit similar to the group this year, although in 2006 we had a little bit more, sort of a bit more clinical in front of goal. It was a group where you thought everything was there for the taking, and if we took our chances and done the business at home, we had every chance of getting out the group.
Coupled on with the fact that obviously Martin O'Neill's home record is in the Champions League and stuff, I think you had confidence that didn't matter who came to Parkhead, you were going to give them a game, and you were disappointed if you actually didn't take anything away from the game. And like say Copenhagen, you were confident that was 3 points. Benfica, confident 3 points. The Man United game, it was a battle of Britain. You always kind of relish that challenge that you can go. I know obviously now it's definitely Scottish League is looked down on. It was also looked down upon a wee bit, but even back then. But so it was a chance for us to say, look, we're actually no bad side in that. But you might look down the league here, but we've got to play against the big boys, and we'll show you what we can do and stuff. So it was an intriguing group. Like say, guys that came in, big fan, Vinegar Hesselink, or I think he was top goal scorer in Holland, or he was banging them in. He was well fought after. It was obviously a time where you could attract that type of player. Gravison, that one was that was mental, absolutely mental. You're actually bringing. I know he wasn't in the first team week in, week out, Real Madrid, but when are Celtic ever going to Real Madrid and spending $4 million to bring a guy for Real Madrid? It was madness, and he was an absolute rocket. He was rotten when he came. To be honest, he wasn't brilliant, but he did a job at times. And yeah, Kenny Miller, I thought he was always on the back foot. The fact that he had that ties with Rangers, but yeah, he did perform and stuff. Caldwell was just, I think it was one of these signs, steady professional, knew you were going to get with him. Played how Strachan wanted to play. Like Strachan, I think I was probably one of the guilty ones that didn't really take to him. But then it's on reflection, you realise this guy was a good manager. Like, he had to strip the wage bill so much, and he wasn't given the luxury of Martin to go and spend £6-7 million in players and the wages that went along with that. So Strachan probably, I wouldn't say played the most exciting brand of football at times. I had your Nakamuras and McGeady that could give us that wee bit of trickery out wide, and Sean Maloney even and stuff. But it was almost, I wouldn't be as disrespectful to football, but a lot of the European games, it was give it to Caldwell, and he played a big diagonal up. Fennegar or Hessling generally got an end it, and it was Miller or McDonald there just to kind of to deal with it and things like that. But Strachan, again, I think another thing why he probably wasn't endeared to Celtic fans, he wasn't a Celtic man. And sometimes that's a good thing. You look at Wim Jansen, look at Postecoglou now, big seasons where probably a Celtic-minded person may have got too emotionally involved, and you maybe have had a different outcome. Maybe Rangers would have won the 10. Maybe we wouldn't have won the league last season if you had somebody who was emotionally invested in Celtic. I think that was the thing with Strachan, and I thought it never seemed to try and endear himself with the Celtic fans, but that could have just been the nature of the guy and things like that. But I think on reflection, I think Gordon Strachan can be more than proud of his time at Celtic.
To be fair, just to kind of come to the comments, Patrick McLaughlin. Now, this was one of my issues, and I was doing a bit of research for the podcast tonight. It's crap you can't get good online coverage of these Champions League games back then. I found it hard to find some old footage of the games. And then John comes in, would be nice if Celtic TV offered the old league and Champions League matches as footage in archive format like the WWE. Yeah, there is ways, I'm sure, the Celtic TV can dig into these things. And
is there a way we can combine the two and just have like GR and the King commenting on like Knacker's free kick and stuff like that? That would be amazing.
But say to be fair as well,
Celtic and the Celtic TV is just way behind, man. Absolutely way behind.
You spoke about obviously
DVDs, man.
That's crazy, isn't it? You spoke about the talent of the team, and you're 100% right, because I was thinking that myself. It was a team that's full of workmen, like players who would dig in, give maximum effort, and you have the likes of McGeady and Nakamura. Now, if you look at it from probably a totally obscure, different type of angle, another team that like that, obviously far better in extremes of it. Like, but Atletico Madrid under Diego Simeone, a couple of years back, like you had Godin and players like that, players who aren't exactly amazing on the eye, but they worked hard, and Juan Fran at right back and Luis at left back, and they just done it for the manager, and that's what you kind of got the feeling from this team. And like Barry Robson and Paul Hartley in midfield at some points, and do you know what I mean? So it was incredible that he pulled off some of these cracking European results. Like,
yeah, it definitely was. They were, like you say, they were one of those teams that they were a fit side, and like you say, perhaps not the most easiest on the eye, but they definitely kept going right till the very end. And opening night came, and sadly, as it always does, ended in defeat. But it was definitely not the one-way traffic that all the so-called experts down south presumed it was going to be at Old Trafford that night. Celtic actually took the lead against Manchester United that night through Benegora Hesselink in the 21st minute, and then a perfect dive from Ryan Giggs. I don't think I've ever seen him that well until it was on his brother's bed. Man United scored to equalise, and Luis Saha then made it 2-1, and we thought, oh well, you know, this could be sore. But then, and more of this is to come later on in the show, a perfect free kick for Nakamura left Van der Sar motionless, and it was 2-2 at half time. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer did make it 3-2 to Celtic, did 3-2 to Manchester United, early in the second half, and unfortunately we didn't really threaten in front of goal after that. However, like you say, guys, about Thomas Gravesen, absolutely great. You know, he came with these big games in mind. This is what he was signed for. And yet 2 of the 3 goals, it was him that gave the ball away that night, Stephen. You just think a little bit more composure in the middle of the park, and we could have taken something from Old Trafford.
I mean, Thomas Robertson, he was an enigma, wasn't he? Like, see all the stories you hear of him by like Cy Ferry or whoever it was around about him that time. He was going into reserve league football going, all right, lad, and then trying to take the ball and chop people on the halfway line and run around. I remember listening to one of their podcasts, and it was something he was playing on the right-hand side, and Mark Wilson was behind him. I think it was Mark Wilson saying it. And Mark was like, you need to track back. And he was like, who do you think you're talking to? That type of stuff. And he was just running around the pits and leaving them at will. But see that night at Old Trafford, I remember getting into the game and coming from obviously the FA Cup and big Blackburn and beating Liverpool and Battle of Britons. It was all the thing. It was what you look forward to when you get these draws, and you still do, because you always hope for an English team in some shape or form. But it was just, again, the arrogant side of things. Everyone was thinking it was going to be an easy win for Manchester United. They were chock full of talent, let's be honest. Strachan, Ferdinand, you have Gary Neville, all them types of players, and they think they're going to walk over us and do this and do that. But see, I remember maybe Granda spoke about this. If you actually took both results and did it in a Champions League, what do you call it? The Champions League knockout round, we'd win due to away goals. So you have to take some kind of form in that. Aye. But the performance that night, it was good. I mean, we played really well. I thought Fennegar Hasling totally dominated Ferdinand. And I think he lost him for the first goal. He put in the bottom right corner, I think it was. And then Nakamura's free kick was, it was just a thing of beauty, wasn't it? The guy, I mean, this guy is incredible. We talk about Kyogo and Maeda, Hatate, lesser so Edagutsi, and now we'll have Kobayashi coming in. But Nakamura was an absolute legend. You know what I mean? This guy came in for 3 years to our club and lit us up with some fantastic moments. The 2 free kicks against United, there's something that's going to replay for years and years to come. And he just left Van der Sar, didn't he? Van der Sar had no chance. He didn't move. And the place erupted from the wee 6,000 Celtic fans there at the time. But yeah, it was a good performance. And like Saha as well, and Giggs, I remember that, Dave. And I remember Bhoys went mental. Bhoys was going crazy. But then obviously the referee thinks different. They win the game. But you got a lot of confidence in that first game, Anthony. You've seen a lot of players who maybe you thought couldn't cope really step up to the plate and show themselves in that stage. And Gordon Strachan, again, to be fair, nearly executed that game plan to perfection.
He did. And I think, Franco, we sort of got a sign of what was to come in terms of, like we say, that fitness and never say die attitude from Celtic under Strachan in this, especially in Europe during this time. And from that, we had, and like you say, there was obviously a bit of trepidation about could Gordon take on what O'Neill had done in Europe in terms of the home record especially, and maintain it. And our first home game on the back of that was against Copenhagen, the pot 4 side. And to be fair, in terms of there wasn't much between the two sides that night. It was a very close affair. But, and this is where he kept it, he did manage to keep the run going. Yes, it was a penalty kick, but Kenny Miller, on the back of winning, scoring his first against Rangers that weekend, and a 2-0 victory, kept his scoring run up. We are winner in the Champions League. After had done a bad spell of 7-8 games without scoring in a derby and then scoring the winner in a Champions League tie, it's not too bad.
It was not too bad because obviously, like most strikers, you want to get off the mark as quickly as you can, and then obviously more so somebody like Kenny Miller, who had that Rangers background, obviously had his doubters because of that, and the more he goes on without not scoring, it's just adds to that. So, I mean, I don't know if he could have picked a debut goal, probably, I mean, any striker probably pick his first game, but if it was to be another game, I don't think he could have picked a better game, and the magnitude of the goal and stuff. Then obviously went on to showed the confidence in like he was obviously still flying for the weekend and stuff. It showed the confidence. I'd went maybe, I think it was 6-7 games, like you said, Anthony, hadn't scored until the Rangers game, then gets a penalty, and he's like, "No, look, I'm the striker. I'll take that penalty." Wasn't it the best penalty, but it doesn't matter. It went in. The keeper was close to it, but I can remember obviously after like the big Champions League win, well, the Champions League wins, just on the car on the way home, you'd put like Scott Sport or something, just the radio on that's the Scottish radio that would be showing you highlights, you would hear the phone-ins and things like that. And I can just remember obviously the commentary for it, and it was like, Kenny Miller, he just can't stop scoring. It's like, oh, calm down. It's his second goal. It's his second goal, and one of them's a penalty. Just calm down. But it's like, set after the disappointment, he put in a really good effort in at Old Trafford, and no managed to take anything away for that game. Like Steve said, that Nakamura free kick, it's mad that he scored 2 brilliant free kicks against Man United, and one's in some quarters with some folk it's actually forgotten about. Obviously Celtic fans remember it, but it was actually, like you say, Van der Sar was rooted to the spot with that one. But to then go into your second game at home, you're obviously sitting in 0 points, but just to get off the market then instills that belief going, right, I think I can do this. The team then also building that, the fans will see that and say, like, well, maybe he can carry on what Neil started in Europe. And that was, I reckon, if you offered the 3 points after 2 games, you take it.
Yeah. Absolutely, and it's some, Stephen, I'm sure you'll be, some you touched on during the campaign this year. It's some we've got to get back to in terms of being harder to break down at home, because 1-0. From what I remember, like you say, I've tried to have a look at some of the highlights myself. I don't recall Copenhagen breaking forward too much in the game. Celtic, we were never really under much pressure, and it's getting those 3 points on the board that can just be the springboard onto better things as the group unfolds.
I mean, to be fair, 100% totally agree. We need to find out roof of the street again in European football. But I wanted this hard back to this United game. Like, if I can read the lineup to you, like the players like Bhoys and Nats, Wilson at right back, Telfer come on the 51st minute, Caldwell, McManus, Naylor, Lennon, Nakamura, Graverson, Jarosik, my favourite player, McGeady, Fennegar, Haslick, and then Miller and Maloney appear as subs. And then you look at the United lineup: Van der Sar, Neville, Ferdinand, Brown, Sylvester, Fletcher, Scholes, Carrick, Giggs, Rooney, Zaha. Like, you cannot underestimate how close we were to pulling off a massive upset at Old Trafford. And for large parts of that game, we were probably on top. I thought we played really well, especially in the first 45. The first half, we were flying. There was no fear in the team. And then, again, you get that. But to go back to what you said, the Copenhagen game, I hate when we get Copenhagen. They bore me to death. We never seem to get rid of them, don't we? And I found footage of the Kenny Miller penalty. It was old, fan footage. And it went into the bottom left corner. The keeper got a touch to it and pushed it into the side net. And all the fans around this guy video was going, come on, Kenny. There was no one giving them grief or shouting at him or anything. It was full on support. It was love, and everyone went mental when that ball hit the back of the net. But it's something that bugs me. Like, it went far too quick, didn't it? This whole home thing. It just seemed to disappear. Mowbray came in. I think he was a big downfall of it in terms of it going. And then Lenny came in. I know we got the Barcelona thing, but after that, it slowly started to dwindle away. I mean, teams like Cluj, teams like Copenhagen, teams like Maribor coming to Celtic Park, not fearing it anymore, embracing the experience and getting the result and coming away like, do you know what I mean? We deserve that victory, when in reality, we should be the ones on top and getting them victories. I mean, you're beating Copenhagen, we'll eventually come on to United and Benfica, but Anthony, it's a big bugbear of mine. Like, we really need to find that clinical edge again in the Champions League.
Absolutely. And speaking of big nights in European games, Franco, this is a game somewhat one. I can't remember which game we were talking about the other week when I says it sort of goes under the radar when you talk about the big European nights at Champions League nights at Parkhead. You think, Juventus, Barcelona, even the Man United game that we're going to come on to. But the Benfica game, I remember it's definitely one of my favourites, especially that second half performance.
Oh,
it was absolutely incredible, and the atmosphere that night was off the scale. Benfica, were high flying at the time. It's always going to be between them and Porto domestically, and they obviously came and created plenty of chances and brought a massive support, as they always do. But in terms of the second half, I think that's possibly the best 45 minutes Celtic have played, arguably in Europe in the 21st century. They absolutely ran over the Portuguese champions.
Strachan's first season was my first season as a season ticket holder. Then obviously a second season. That's the first I'm doing it as getting the Champions League. I'd obviously been to European games beforehand and things like that under Martin O'Neill, but never really as a season ticket holder. So tickets sometimes were few and far between to try and get a hold of back then. By the first half, I can remember it wasn't much a cage of it. We had chances, but not really off memory, not really many clear-cut chances. Benfica probably, I think they had a couple chance, but it was one of the ones you thought, right, we need to come at the second half, try and get on top of them, get an early goal, because they'll maybe just start growing in belief and maybe just catch us on the break and get a wee count. It was one of the ones I felt, I mean, it's obviously the benefit of hindsight, but it's one of the ones you felt, if you get a goal, you'll score at least another one and put the game to bed. But if they score, it might deflate you. Because I can remember, like I say, the first half was decent, but the way we started the second half and stuff, we just started flying. It was like they're putting so much energy into this. They really need to take advantage of it. Otherwise, it could just totally deflate you. And then it was just one of the ones, just Maloney, just a wee bit of trickery out wide. And was it Nakamura that cut it? No, Maloney cut it back, and Nakamura had like a shot and Kenny miskicked it, and Kenny Miller was just kind of at the back post and just prodded it in and stuff, and that was it. He just then straight after that, it just gave the whole stadium an absolute lift. And then Kenny Miller again with a header. How's Kenny Miller scored the second goal again?
The second one's probably, but for me,
where Maloney
best Champions League goal. Yeah, it's
similar,
the one that the
Gary,
complete counter attack.
Similar to Gary Hooper's in the 3-0 against Rangers in a way, I thought. Where he just Maloney picks it up and then he just plays it in, and Kenny Miller just takes a touch and just rattles it. Well, it doesn't even matter, curls it round the keeper. The keeper
keeps it in the bottom corner. Yep.
You're saying the keeper should never get beaten in the near post there, but it actually kind of curls it round the keeper a wee bit, I feel like. And then obviously Pearson right in the 90th minute, it was just not really a scrummage. It was, I think it was a deflected shot that kind of came out to Pearson. He even scuffed it, kicked into the ground, and it just kind of bounced in and up and the goalkeeper. But 2-0 in the 90th minute, the game's gone. It's Pearson's goal isn't really important. It's always great to get another goal, but it's in the grand scheme of the game, it's not important in the 90th minute. But I can just remember that atmosphere in that game, that second half. It was bounce. It's one of the best I've experienced up until about 4 or 5 weeks later.
Absolutely. I think it's safe to say if we had the podcast going back then, Stephen would have been telling us to sign Stephen Pearson for about 3 years before that. We know what he's like with his SPL work. But listen, which we did, he'd been on the books for a couple of years, to be fair. And it was you could tell that was almost, it wasn't one of Strachan's sort of first picks by any stretch, Stephen, but he had a good game that night when he came on, to be fair, and obviously scored the goal that put the game beyond any doubt. But it was a terrific result that night against a very good Benfica side.
I mean, the Benfica side, years gone past, I mean, they had a striker called, do you remember Cardozo? He used to score against us.
He Colombian South America.
Aye, he was a cracking striker for them, had some cracking players.
Nuno Gomez was there as well.
Nuno Gomez, we all know the history of Benfica, but I mean, you're talking about Stephen Pearson, Alfie. I mean, we're on the Champions League rewind, talking about all these illustrious clubs, and we're talking about Pearson, like, coming in and scoring a goal for Celtic.
Paul Telford, Gary Caldwell.
Paul Telford and all, like, so it's the thing I liked about Pearson, every time he seemed to come on, he scored. He was just a big, tall, lanky player, awkward in stature, awkward the way he ran, and he got in all these positions. He was quite athletic and deceivingly quick, and I mean, he got the goal, and Phil McGinley, him there, the lethal striker for them, 100%. I used to hate playing against him, but that night, I mean, it was, to be fair, it was probably Kenny Miller's night, if we're honest. He scored 2 goals for us, and the breakaway goal, Maloney kind of put it back to him. He had the composure, and as Anthony was going to say there, probably counter-attacking football. That's probably the best you're probably going to see at Celtic Park. I mean, it was just incredible. And Benfica I think they had a couple of chances straight after the first goal. They could have scored, and then that's where the goal kind of led from. And then Miller slats it away. But if you look at it, like, we played a flat 4-4-2. So I mean, how old-fashioned is that even to think? I mean, you've got Telfer and Naylor on the full-back positions. You got Nakamura, Maloney on the wings, and Sarasky and Miller up top. So it's simple. Sometimes football gets complicated. So what's that saying? It's a simple game complicated by idiots. Sometimes that's true. So I mean, 4-4-2 in Europe We win the game 3-0.
One of our best results as well.
One of our best
results.
Teams
if you
in
put the
European.
strikers up top.
Aye, yeah, 100%. So it's got all that false nine stuff. But yeah, again, Frank Kennedy comes in. Miller, to be fair, gave us all. Yeah, we said that, Frank. I totally agree. Do you know what I mean? And we all know he's a Rangers man. We all know he's a diehard Rangers man. But while he was with us, there was no sign of lack of effort. And I won't kind of hold that against him. I know he doesn't really talk about his time with Celtic, but he was there, Kenny. So don't forget it. We probably had their best nights with us as well in Europe. But it was a good game. A brilliant game to get that victory.
I totally agree with you, Stephen. As I say, I of course accept he wasn't the most prolific, but for Celtic and Scotland, always gave 110%. He was a Strachan signing. Gordon wanted him. Gordon didn't want to sell him. Kenny Miller didn't want to leave Celtic. But Mr. Chief Executive calls the shots. Say no more. And
did they sell him? The jerseys he used to wear. He used to wear the baggiest jerseys in the world, man.
Oh, yeah,
sleeves were
long
like
sleeve.
Hanging there. They were hanging there at the top, and the shorts were down to his ankles, man.
Yeah, it was for all his efforts. He certainly wasn't going to be on a catwalk anytime soon. With some of the ways he used to model the strips, but of course, Stephen, typical Celtic in Europe. We had a fantastic one at home against Benfica, and as is normally happens when we play the Portuguese giants, the score line's reversed over there. So we lost 3-0 quite convincingly over their typical Celtic performance away from home in Europe. We went over there thinking if we get a point, we're pretty much through, and we were 2-0 down after 20 minutes. Gary Caldwell on goal, and then Nuno Gomez scored. And basically, we've seen this script a million times. We had a third goal in the 76th minute from Karanka, and that was pretty much that. So it was still all to play for. Thankfully, Copenhagen had defeated Man United that night 1-0, so it still kind of kept us in close range to them, but we did still have that little cushion between the other two teams as well. And so, as I say, we'll move swiftly on for that, and we'll give a wee bit extended chat to one of the most famous nights in Celtic's history.
I can't believe you're glossing there. Gary Caldwell's 20 minutes in that game, man.
It's a video nasty.
That second goal. I mean, the first one will defend him. The first one will defend him to an extent at the fact that Nuno Gomez in the back post, he's got to slide in and try and defend it. But it's just one of the ones that goes in. But his second one is, see if you watch replays, you actually see him, like, as soon as it has his face and it falls to the boy, he's like, just knows it. Actually falling out the sky and hits off his head. And I mean, it was a big head to hit. But Caldwell had a shocker that day. Like,
it was one of those ones because he played pretty well. Absolutely. Disaster class performances. You couldn't agree more, Phil. I think that's the thing. Like, he'd been playing pretty well up to that, and folk were going, "Fucking hell, man, we've got an absolute steal here." But I always felt you were only a couple of games away from the next mistake.
Do you not remember he always used to try them like long raking passes? I think he pulled off 2 in one game.
It was all right.
Mate, about 9 times out of 10 it'd be out the pitch.
But the one time that it did come off, Stephen, was the one against Rangers in 2008. So all is forgiven for that goal, I have to say. But Stephen, we'll go back to you, as I say, what we have, and this is one of the things that always strikes me that's quite funny about this game. This is one of the most famous nights at Celtic Park, certainly in recent memory. And yet, nobody was talking about how if Celtic only won 1-0 in that night that they would qualify. There's actually a famous moment where Neil Lennon's getting interviewed after the game, picking up the Man of the Match award, and they say, "You're through, Neil. You've actually qualified." And he's like, "Have we?" Like, there was no great fanfare that Celtic had actually qualified because of the way the group was working out. Folk were still trying to work out whether it had actually happened or not. But needless to say, leading up to that, we've talked about them before. Some of the players that United had on offer that night, they maybe weren't at their peak, but they were certainly on the rise again. That season actually ended up to be Man United's first Premier League title in 3 years that year. Your Rooneys, your Sahas, Ferdinands, obviously Cristiano Ronaldo goes without saying. But again, apart from the last 5 minutes, I don't recall them having too many chances that night, but Celtic kind of contained them quite well, even though they had the lion's share of possession. But then with about 7 minutes to go, just like at Old Trafford, your favourite player, Yuri Jarosek, was fouled a little bit further outside the box this time, about 35 yards against, in my opinion, as a United fan, fan, not supporter, the Man United's greatest ever goalkeeper, Edwin van der Sar. Thought it's going to have to be something special to beat him for there. But then again, we do have someone special in Shinsuke Nakamura. I don't know about you, but every time, the more you watch it, it almost seems to get further out. The more you watch it. For me, it's one of the greatest goals ever scored. It's an absolute peach, and if that had been a more famous player, he would probably be on the opening credits of every Champions League rewind.
Yeah, they should be featured on the montages of every Champions League campaign of goals and highlights. It was absolutely incredible. Just to touch upon that night, I mean, I'll throw a few stats in that I kind of looked at today. Apparently now, this is the last time United lost a group stage game until 2011. And then you look at their team. You say Van der Sar, arguably their greatest back two, and Ferdinand and Vidic as well. They were absolute rocks together. And then you had the likes of Ronaldo, who was emerging, coming into the game for them, and then the ever-present Scholes and Giggs and Zaha and Wayne Rooney, who was the wonder kid at the time. And it's a bit like, you say special, right? And you think it's a bit of a cliche term. And the times I can look back and say probably Barcelona in 2012, AC Milan when Skippy scored a goal and the rain was coming down and Dida got smashed up. And then you probably look at the Manchester United game in 2006, and yeah, for chances it probably wasn't the greatest game, but I really do think that's down to how we set up and how Gordon Strachan set the game up. As I said, you're going with two flat backs of four. You've got two up front, and Fenneker has like Saraski who can get about them, and Fenneker can hold the ball up, bring people into play. And I mean, just to go for it again, Telfer started this game. Baldy started this game. I mean, probably much out of look. Yeah, Baldy, McManus, Naylor, Nakamura, Graverson, Lennon, Snow, Fenneker, Hasling, Saraski, Miller, Jarosik, and Maloney come out of substitutions. I mean, see, to be fair, like, again, this is what my argument is all the time. We looked at this year's Champions League group, and I think, in my personal opinion, we made excuse after excuse after excuse about calibre as a player. But you've got the likes of Van der Snow teaming up against Ronaldo and Giggs and Scholes. Do you know what I mean? So that argument for me flies out the window straight away, because you can't tell me a Modric of Shakhtar Donetsk would get in this United team, or a Van der Snow of Celtic would get in this Ange Postecoglou team. That for me is load of shit, and the argument doesn't stick. There's nights that it just clicks, and this is one of these famous nights. And
you've just argued against your own point now.
I didn't argue against my point.
There's nights it clicks. That's how it does.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is it should happen more than it does now. It's 0 attempts out of fucking 3, Franny, that we didn't get anything from the Champions League. Do you know what I mean? Like, we had 3 games, we drew 1. That's not a good record at home. Come on, like, you know what I'm saying? But Stubbsy's horse here. Attitude and organisation, 100%. It was spot on, and Strachan had it drilled in. And I know the players always hated his pre-seasons. Do you ever hear the ex-professionals talk about it? It was mental, running up hills, just constantly running, being fit, being fast, being mobile, being agile, and you could see that. And that Nakamura free kick was, again, the both of them. Anthony should be at the top of them Champions League credits with the green and white jersey on and the black and green one at the time, the away kit. Both incredible free kicks, and I know you're going to come on to it as well, but the adulation at full time, and Zaha missed that penalty kick, by the way, Bhoys, like, sensational. You just never forget them moments, and I think we underappreciate and undervalue what we've seen before and what we know we can achieve, because I think sometimes now it's an excuse culture where we can blame it on a world-class player or blame it on a finance, but you only have to rewind 15 years ago, and we have the likes of McManus and Baldy up against Wayne Rooney and Zaha. So yeah, that's where I stand on it. These nights can happen, need to happen more often, and if it's more attitude and more organisation, then we'll do it, because I know Postecoglou wants to do that, and I believe in it. But I mean, Gordon Strachan done it really well.
Well, that's the thing, Franco. In terms of that night itself, you know, you said you were there that night. It was your first year as a season book holder. I looking back, I think I went more mental when Boric actually saved the penalty rather than even Naka's amazing goal, because I still thought when Nakamura scored, I thought some of the players Stephen mentioned there, your Rooneys and your Ronaldos, etc., were two. You thought these guys are going to get another chance, and then we gave away a penalty. there was a handball given against us, as always. Just seems to be par for the course these days. And you thought, God, it's going to feel like they're going to get a point against Man United, and it's going to feel like 2 dropped. But cometh the hour, cometh the man. Artur Boruc, possibly, he's that and the year after would probably say was his peak years at Celtic, when I could say he would fit into any team in the world. Came up with the goods and made a fantastic save from Louis Saha.
It's just, like I said, the atmosphere in the Benfica game was just absolutely trumped by this. And I remember at the game, there wasn't many chances for either team and stuff, but it was just that 5-7 minutes to go, you get that free kick. It's got to the edge of the box. It's fucking far for the edge of the box. It's like I say, it's 30-35 yards out, and like I say, every time you see it, every time you talk about it to somebody, it gets further out and gets closer to the sort of a corner, if the corner, if it could get even closer. But even after his goal in the opening game, and what we knew about Nakamura, that it gave us the year and stuff leading up to it, we knew he had it in his locker to put it in there. And even I think Man United knew it as well, because everybody was in, all the big boys were in the wall and stuff, and you've seen their complaints when obviously the free kick was given. I think they feared that it was almost a free kick for about 30-35 yards was a penalty for us almost when Nakamura was on the park. More often than not, he would put it in. And it's absolutely ridiculous how good that free kick is. I don't think there's enough to describe how good that free kick was. And it's not just like under the circumstances. I know a lot of us back then, we didn't really know. We knew if we won, depending on other results, we would be through. But obviously, didn't really have social media or didn't really have the access to things like that at the game. So as much as you were caught up in the excitement of scoring, you weren't really sure where it left you. A Spartak Moscow penalties. That was good. That was a good night.
Coming up on the next rewind.
Yo.
So obviously you didn't really know how you were sitting in the group, if that actually got you through or no. Obviously it was still just the kind of days folk are listening to the wee sort of portable wirelesses and things like that. It was things like that, checking teletext, and some lucky person maybe had a mobile phone in the ground, and it was.
I still remember the number on the teletext that you typed in. It was unbelievable.
What was it then?
427.
All right, I'll try to catch you there. But it's like you said, Nakamura, like that should be in highlight reels. That goal with in the Champions League and stuff. It's like folk going about saying, Beckham was a great free kick to Roberto Carlos and all that. It's like they weren't in the level with Nakamura. The only guy I would honestly put above Nakamura is the Bhoys for Leon. He was ridiculous for free kicks, absolutely ridiculous. But I would put they two on a par for free kicks. Maybe Hadji as well. Hadji was really good. But I like Steven Sedela as well with Nakamura. He was like an absolute icon in Japan. I think it was only the boy Nakata at Roma that was probably the main guy in Japan. Then we had the next guy, and it was just one of them. He was just an absolute special player. And like, so you get the pen against you, like you said, Anthony. I can remember being at the game as well. Obviously, after he sort of calmed down, he's celebrating after Nakamura scores. You're like looking up at the clock, and it's one of them 5 minutes to go by the time you stop celebrating. But it just feels like an hour. It's dragging, and you're constantly looking up. You're like, it's only been 20 seconds. You're cheering every tackle, every throw, and you get just anything, a decision that goes your way. Then obviously they get the penalty, and you're like, oh, just absolutely deflated. Then Boruc, he had it in him. You were confident. I think he was that tall figure in goals. Be better, didn't we dance about and stuff, but you always had confidence that he would save a penalty. I don't know if he would get away with one of them now, because he was probably well off his line as well when he saved it, because you've seen a lot of keepers back then, they'd always dive forward, so they must have been well off the line. And like I said, but it was good hands that he managed to just push it out wide, and we managed to clear it. But after the game, what an absolute! I don't think it was until we got back in the car, me, my sister, and Vary, that we actually realised that we're actually through. When you started listening on the radio, and you're like, just struggle to get to sleep that night. But it's been one of along with Barcelona, Spartak Moscow, and obviously the many times those when you beat Rangers, it's got to be hard to ever beat that game.
I totally agree, and I think that's the thing. But as Stephen, you mentioned before, because it was 3-2 to United at Old Trafford, but 1-0 to us, it meant that no matter what happened in match night 6, our name would be in the hat for the last 16. So it was an absolutely tremendous effort, and it's scary to think now, qualifying for the last 16 with a game to spare. It's been a long, long time since anything like that's ever happened. But I think this might actually be the only time out the 3 times that we've done it where it didn't go down to the last game. But we did have the chance to win the group if we bettered Man United's score in the final game, but unfortunately they won 3-1 quite convincingly at Old Trafford against Benfica, and we had our typical night away from home in Europe, a 3-1 defeat to Copenhagen, very similar to the Anderlecht games or the Rosenborg games for years before. We're 2-0 down after less than half an hour, and from pretty much then it's just damage limitation. But regardless of that, the final group standings where Man United went through in first place with 12 points, Celtic through on 9, thanks to winning their 3 home games. Benfica and Copenhagen were both tied on 7 points, but due to the head-to-head, Benfica went through to the UEFA Cup, and Copenhagen were eliminated from Europe. So we hoped, Franco, that first time in the last 16, maybe they would be the groups. The gods would give us a decent draw, be kind to us, and then again they just do what they normally did. They gave us AC Milan, the of old, may I add, not the kind of current indifferent lot, a proper behemoth, old money AC Milan, full of the likes of Kaká and the rest. Paolo Maldini's obviously still playing with them at that point as well. They went on to win the tournament this year, and Carlo Ancelotti actually said that Celtic were the hardest team in the entire competition that they faced that year. The tickets sold out in record time, as you can imagine, for the home leg, which finished 0-0. Bit of a game of chess, sort of speaking for my memory being there. Don't recall us having too many chances. Then again, apart from maybe 1 or 2 saves for Boric, I don't recall them sort of being too gung-ho either. It was very much a game played in the middle of the park. I remember one shot from Lee Naylor, it was about 30 yards, that wasn't too far away. But apart from that, we didn't really threaten. And in the return leg in the San Siro, we could finish 0-0 at Celtic Park. Very credible result. We went over there thinking, God, if we could just sneak a goal from set play, something like that, a Nakamura special. We were denied a Stonewall penalty early doors. The referee decided that he couldn't see a blatant handball. But we held out until extra time, believe it or not. But then that little bit of extra skill and class just shone through, and Kaká ran through the entire midfield before placing it under Boric. So it was a bitterly disappointing night, but very, also at the same time, very proud.
He's not right, sir.
No.
It was one of the ones, Anthony. You were obviously buzzing to be in the draw. You were never got to get an easy game, so it didn't really matter who better to get than the AC Milan old, the original, if you like. It's back when they had the stars with Kaká. I think Pirlo would have been there at the time. Seedorf potentially might have been there. I think Pippo Inzaghi was up front for them. I think Maldini was. I can't remember if Nesta was there in that year or the year after. Can't actually remember. But I was. Cafu was maybe there and stuff. They would have had the superstars of the world back then, but it was a very, very cagey game. It felt like not that AC Milan weren't trying to win the game, but it was almost they were like, well, we know what they've done in the group stages. They've won all their home games. Well, let's not make it hard for us in the home line. It's not that I don't think obviously guys like Carlo Ancelotti as manager and the players they had there, they wouldn't have been happy with 2-0, but they'd have probably thought, worst case, if it ends up 2-0, we'll probably take them back to San Siro and we'll be confident in their own ability. We've got superstars in this team that will be able to put it back. But it was one of the ones, let's stay in the game. And I think this typical Italians, they know how to defend, and they never really gave us much chances. But I think equally we were still trying to keep ourselves in the tie. maybe be able to sneak an away goal in the away leg and stuff. But going to the San Siro, it's an iconic stadium, chance to maybe progress. You're against odds, you know you're up against it and stuff. Kaká was arguably the best player in world football at this time and stuff, and his goal kind of brought back memories of what was his name, McManaman for Liverpool back many moons ago, where and Van Jansen's reign, where he just kept on running. You're like, somebody just snap him, because I think it was not about 5 minutes or 10 minutes before the end of the game or something. It was near the end of the game. You're maybe just thinking, like,
quite late on,
get it to penalties and chance your luck. And by Kaká, it's probably easier said than done to hack a player like that abilities. We wouldn't have been the only team to try and pull him down. It was probably dealing with that week in, week out, and just learned how to get away with it. But every time I seen replays, it was like, somebody just go and bring him down. Just bring him down and then try and deal with the free kick and hopefully get it to penalties. But it's one of the ones that was a valiant effort, but it just ended up in heartache. But it was a piece of magic for Kaká at the end of the day.
Yeah, I suppose, Stephen, if you're going to go out in Europe, you might as well go out on your sword, because there's absolutely we played very well over there. Yes, it was a game where we had our backs against the wall a lot. AC Milan are always going to have the lion's share of possession, especially in the San Siro. But we threatened, and like I say, we had a stonewall penalty claim turned down, and we more than gave our all against a team that, as we said, went on to win the tournament that year. But it's unfair. If you're going to lose, you might as well lose to a goal of the kind of quality that Kaká provided. But there's only so many special players are capable of doing that, and it was just one step too far for us on the night.
I mean, to be fair, I think probably about 3 or 4 times we faced in the Champions League the eventual winners, haven't we? Like Barcelona, Milan, them types of teams have always went on to either do well or win the Champions League. Mm-hmm. I mean, one of these 2 games, possibly the home leg, I think McGeady kind of come onto the scene, didn't he? And took Maldini to school. Obviously, can't take that man to school, but he tortured him in one of these games. I'm pretty sure it was. And he was fantastic.
That's one of the group game when we got them in the groups, mate. But
it might have been the group.
I remember him getting raved about Maldini, and Nesta raved about him after a game.
But yeah, Anthony, like, to be fair, I mean, Ancelotti gave us high praise, and we're a tough team in terms of the overall winners. I mean, you have to respect him saying that. But I mean, Patrick McLaughlin said it. I think that they studied what the Bayern Munich did previously in terms of coming to us for a point and then getting the win over their ground. The game was balanced on the knife edge, wasn't it? Do you know what I mean? It was balanced on an absolute night. Like, it was one of them ones we didn't want to overcommit. We were sitting back a lot. We were drawing the attention onto ourselves, kind of soaking up, trying to hit them on the counter. And just one bugbear for me was Neil Lennon should have took Kaká out. Like, he should have took. I mean, he one of the most criminal things is watching Lennon try and sprint and keep up with Kaká. He just should have wiped them out, took one for the team, and then if he got a red card, it would have been probably a yellow card stopping the counter attack. So be it. But yeah, probably one of our most respectable performances in a knockout tie. Obviously, we haven't won since 2004 in an individual type game. But it was just a bit bittersweet, to be fair. They won the Champions League and stuff, but you still thought maybe we could have went one stage further if Lenny just made that decision and chopped them down.
Well, that's the thing, Franco, that you're absolutely bang on, Stephen, because I must admit, going into when the 90 minutes were up that night, and I remember watching it at a friend's house, and everyone was in a pretty jovial spirits. Was going, this game's here for the taking. We can actually knock AC Milan out on their own patch. But there was a part of me that felt that the way the whole match was panning out, that it was kind of similar to the match against Porto and Seville, where you thought it's going to be very, very close. We're going to do ourselves proud, and we absolutely did. But I never felt like we were maybe going to get that moment where we would come out on top. I did feel that if there was going to be one winner, it was possibly going to be due to a bit of magic from Milan. But you have to say, Franco, there's absolutely no disgrace in losing to AC Milan. And it's probably, as Stephen says, when you look back at, all the campaigns for year gone by, this sometimes can get overlooked at just how well we played that night, and how much we did have Milan on the ropes at certain points in the game.
It was like you say, when I jog my memory back, it was when it went into the extra time. You're sitting going, right, well, we know we're a fit team. We know we always go for the 90 minutes. So we've probably got something left in the tank that can maybe just try for the first 15 minutes here, have a wee go. And I don't really think, I think the whole extra time, what I can remember, it was crazy. There wasn't a lot of clear-cut chances, and it was just, like you say, Kaká came up with that bit of magic and stuff, which can happen. He just showed how fit he was. Like we're saying, Lennon was never blessed with pace, so there was only one winner in that race, and I think even Nakamura was, if I remember right, I think Nakamura was even chasing him. So I think I had the two slowest guys in our team try to chase him back, and I just dribbled his way through the team, and just it was a brilliant goal. But I just keep going back, just like McMahon, just someday tackle him, someday bring him down.
Hindsight, as they say, is
a wonderful thing, isn't it?
But in terms of season 2006-07, the rest of the campaign, certainly domestically, it was very good. As I say, we won the league pretty comfortably. Again, it was 2 in a row in terms of league titles for Gordon in that season. We also won the Scottish Cup that year. So we actually, I always remember in the Celtic View summer edition that year, he says he went, essentially, I've won a treble. This is, the true domestic double plus the last 16 qualification in the Champions League. And to be when you think about it like that, it's not a mean feat, but by any stretch. And it was Neil Lennon's final season as a player with us. So his last act as captain was to lift the Scottish Cup after a admittedly pretty drab affair against Dunfermline, where John Joe Pierre Doomday scored the winner with 5 minutes to go.
Mate, I watched that in a pub in Halifax that game.
That one.
I actually watched that in a pub in Halifax. My cousin was getting married, and me, my uncle, my dad, and my cousin sneaked at the wedding.
Just to go watch the game.
Aye.
We had tickets for the game that day, and then ended up going over to Dublin to watch it, as you do. But what can you say? And but in terms of the show tonight, guys, that's pretty much it. As I say, we'll hopefully do another rewind soon, where we can talk about the following season, 2007-08, where there's penalty shootout drama, mayhem as Donati scores the last minute winner against Shakhtar, and we find ourselves once again in the last 16. We got to the point under Gordon Strachan that we thought that was just the norm, that we just qualified all the time. But needless to say, it didn't happen too often after that. But Stephen, as I say, you want to? I'll hand over to yourself just to kind of promote Friday night show coming up, as of course Celtic are back this weekend.
I mean, the long-awaited return of Celtic. I know we played Rennes in a closed-door friendly or got beat 4-3 by all accounts. It sounded like an entertaining game, but let's not read too much into it. We're top league, 9 points clear. They have Ian Beale at the wheel, and we're going to have Postecoglou bring us back to action on Saturday. We'll be looking ahead to that on Friday. Back to normal podcast. These rewinds and spin-offs have been excellent. We're going to obviously keep doing it when we have time and more in the pipeline. And John, who's in the comments, we're doing a Who Wants to Be a Millionaire quiz for Hogmanay. So that'll be unbelievable. Look forward to. John's hosting it. I'm sure it's going to be excellent. Much like Willie's quiz was. If you haven't watched the World Cup quiz, go back to Friday. You probably need 2 days to yourself to watch it, but it's absolutely incredible.
I have to come to a hotel. I have to come to a hotel. Can't leave it.
But yeah, we're back to normal Friday. Looking forward to it, Anthony. Great rewind as well, buddy.
That's great. Thanks very much, guys. Thanks for coming on tonight. Both of you really appreciate it. And thanks to everyone for joining in and getting involved in the comments as well. It's always great to hear from you all. And the next time, I won't be on Friday night. I'm not sure. I think it's yourself, Ross, and Willie. Stephen, am I right?
Yeah.
So the other boys that are on tonight. And the rest of these I shall see at the Endless Celts Christmas party on Saturday. Cheers, guys.
Lucky for yourself. See you later. Stay well. Keep safe.
Hail, hail, folks. Cheers.